Hello everyone, happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of BrainScratch. I'm your host, John Lorden. As you can hear, this cold is really trying to get me, but I tried to rest up my energy so I could get this camera going. I tried to save my voice. I've hardly been talking all day. I think I've got enough to get through this. Wish me luck, guys. I'm doing it for you. My social media has been exploding with images just like this one back here. You can see we've got what looks like a human in a picture with an alien. We've got Saturn in the background, so I don't think they're standing on Earth. But that is Bruno Borges, or Borges. I'm not sure which way it's pronounced. And this is a little interesting for a BrainScratch because he is missing, and typically we would use the searchlight show for people that are missing. However, I think by the time you get to the end of this video, you're going to understand why this is firmly in BrainScratch territory. Ultimately, there are many theories about what has happened to him. We're going to get into some of those details, but the theories vary from, some type of Men in Black came to abduct him, possibly one of these alien grays came to abduct him, but there might be something else going on around all this. Is this potentially a reach for fame and or money as well? I'm going to leave it up to you guys, but we're going to look into information deeper in this story than I'm typically seeing in some of the English-speaking media around this only. So you'll see what I mean by the time we get to the end, but let's get started. So what is the story here? Starting at butterflylanguage.com, which is a blog that basically tried to summarize what I consider the most popular aspects of the story that I'm seeing repeated time and time again on different publications. The strange disappearance of Bruno Silva Borges. On March 27th, Bruno Silva Borges, 24, apparently disappeared, leaving his home with only shorts and a t-shirt and his worried family with no clue what happened to him. But what Bruno left behind him has captivated Brazilian media and has produced even more questions than answers. Because his room looked like something akin to an updated version of a high magic temple, with an almost life-size statue of 16th century philosopher and occultist Giordano Bruno as a centerpiece and a detailed oil painting of Borges with a gray alien. Now, it's pretty interesting, but they missed the other thing that's really odd about this room, which is there is writing literally all over the walls, on the floor, all over the ceiling. All the furniture has been removed. And most of the writing is encoded, though I can see some of it isn't. I believe that some of it is just in straight Portuguese. Here, these books are also a big part of the story, but note how they are numbered. Apparently, he is working on 14 books. You will see the ones that are numbered here on the table. We've got 1, 5, 7, 9. I believe 10 is there under that picture of him. And then over to the right here, there is 3 more, I believe. So of the 14 books he's working on, I believe only 7 or 8 are actually in book form here. However, if you do look at more footage from around the room, you'll see that these red, bold Roman numerals also happen at certain parts of the walls. So there is some assumption that he has written the other books actually onto the walls. And the first question I have about that is, how big can those books be? I mean, granted, there is a lot of surface area in this room. There's a lot of shelving units that were all white that have also been written on, literally both sides, on the interior, on the exterior. But for a book, I just have to question, is there actually enough media on all those walls to really fill in the gaps of these 14 books? Or maybe they're not complete. Maybe this was his way of working through them. But here's an example of some of the writing that was found on the walls in his room, and you can see this is obviously been encoded. This one, I believe, has actually been cracked. Yeah, it's right here. It's called The Hard Way. And I'm not going to read the whole thing for you guys. Of course, I'll have links in the description box for you, so just come to the Butterfly Language link if you want to read this. But I have to tell you that it doesn't strike me as anything particularly out there. I mean, we're talking about a college student. He's apparently a psychology college student. It seems to me that he has some interest specifically in philosophy And the stuff that he's talking about here, I think you could go to any college anywhere around the world and throw a stick and you're going to hit some kid that can recite something like this. There's nothing very interesting, at least in what has been translated from this one piece. As a matter of fact, it's kind of common in terms of people looking at how our society is somewhat governed and run and how we might be just pawns in that. Jumping over to mirror.co.uk, which I know they can glamorize stories quite a bit, and there's no exception going on here. Alien enthusiast mysteriously disappears, leaving behind locked, code-covered room and statue of 16th century philosopher who predicted extraterrestrial life. And in a bit of a strange bit of synergy here, of course the philosopher's last name is Bruno, and Bruno's first name is Bruno. Some people have even compared pictures of them and think that they look very similar to each other. The psychology student's disappearance has sparked worldwide interest, with many believing he's been abducted by aliens after a bizarre video of the inside of his bedroom was leaked online. I have some questions about that leaked online bit. We'll get to those soon. Borges appeared to have turned the room into a shrine to the extraterrestrial world, has removed all the furniture and put up a creepy self-portrait of himself with an alien. Now, I just want to stop there. Of all the research that I've done on this case, I have not found anything that is extraterrestrial in nature outside of the picture of him with the gray alien. I did see that there was kind of some knickknacks that looked Egyptian in there, which is a bit of a loose connection, but I know there's many people that believe in the kind of ancient aliens, astronaut theories. But in terms of anything that's been decoded from the room or any of the writing in the books, which admittedly there's not a ton of detail about, but there has been some parts that have been interpreted beside that part that I was just talking about, the hard way. One of the book titles has also been deciphered. None of them are suggesting anything to do with extraterrestrials, at least that I've bumped into so far. There is an insistence, if you look through the media on this, to pull this conversation towards extraterrestrials, I believe, just because of that picture that he has in there and because of a picture he posted on Facebook of him in front of ET. But let's consider for a second what Bruno is doing with his life. He's a psychology student. He's not an astronomer. He's not some type of rad mathematician. Quite honestly, the disciplines that I typically see with people that are really into UFOs and extraterrestrials, he's not going down that path. Admittedly, maybe he's struggling with that. It seems like his mother also works in psychology, so it could be that his parents have kind of driven him down this road. Maybe this is his form of rebelling against that in some way. But I just find it very interesting that so many people are really writing this from the angle of, ooh, this kid was into aliens and now he's gone and disappeared, after writing all this stuff all over all the walls. And this article is assuming that that stuff's about aliens. I can tell you, just at least from the stuff I've seen, I don't see anything to support that. The walls are also covered with coded writing, and signs associated with Satanism and the Illuminati are spread across the floor. Now, I think even that is a little bit of an overstatement. He might have had some exposure to those symbols before. Is there a reason why he picked those symbols in particular? Perhaps, but I do think it's very important. I don't want it to sound like, oh wow, this kid drew a bunch of satanic ritual stuff all over the floor. That's really not what I'm getting from the information I'm reviewing on this case. It's just that he used some of those symbols in his encryption. Now, the Mirror does even go into some information about the translations. Among the writings were passages from the Bible and phrases from Leonardo da Vinci, which lay in among 14 handwritten books, which were also encrypted. So once again, they're pointing out information, but it's still not supporting that this has anything to do with information specifically about extraterrestrials. And here we get the first little wink of something that, unfortunately, when you start digging into this case a bit deeper, I'm hearing a bit too much of for my taste. Relatives say Borges was constantly asking them for funding for his latest secretive project, but wouldn't give any details apart from saying he was writing a series of books that would, quote, change humanity in a good way. I've bumped into more than one reference, I could say several references specifically about him asking people for money. And we're not talking about small amounts of money. We're talking he wants people to back the publication of his novels, but he's not going to let them know what those novels are. In one case, he actually did give a sample to his mother. The story is that it took her 3 times of reading through it, and then she thought it was the most brilliant thing that she ever read. I'm pretty sure that my mom has said that about some stuff that I've written as well. I just have to put out there, once again, there is this veil of secrecy going on between the stories we're being told, particularly by his family members, and the actual evidence that would support that. The encryption key was found. So first of all, there is no mystery about trying to crack all this writing that's all over the walls. He literally left the key in the room. It was found by his siblings. And despite some information you'll see by media saying, oh, this was cracked by a brilliant computer engineer in Brazil, oh, this was cracked by the media, the information I'm finding says no, his siblings literally found the key and started deciphering the information themselves as soon as they found that key. Here's a good shot showing the writing going into the cabinets and down on the floor. There is one other thing that I meant to point out back on Butterfly Language. If you take a look at the picture of the writing, everyone seems very impressed when you look at these kind of blurry photos about the penmanship, about how level everything is and how even it is. In certain photos, you can see someone actually went through and literally lined everything out. So this was somewhat planned. I don't know if he knew exactly where the words were going to fall line for line, but he at least knew, I'm going to write this section and I need a big block. And he drew out, it looks like with pencil, using something very straight, probably a long straight edge. He drew out the blocks needed so that he would keep it all in line and that consistent. So I know for me personally, when I first heard of this story, the first thing I imagine is like something out of a movie, like, a white beam hits this guy in the head and all of a sudden he picks up a pencil and he's not even looking at the wall. He's just like scribbling stuff and it's all coming out all neat and perfect. That is certainly not what's going on here. You can tell, at least from this photo in particular, there is some planning that went into the layout. And if you remove the story about him missing and you just take a look at this room in itself, there is what I consider a bit of an artistic vibe going on in there. It could be that this kid is a brilliant artist and just doesn't quite realize it yet, or he's using that to try to promote his writing in some way. But there is a pretty decent aesthetic going on visually if you look at the blocks of text versus diagrams that he's drawn versus larger pieces of text with, way bigger letters. The way that it is wrapping all around the building, the way that it goes on the floor, big diagrams that have been drawn in the floor, and then like the statue of the philosopher is literally standing on the center of this giant diagram that was kind of drawn out on the floor. Honestly, I think this kid would have a great, I keep saying kid, he's 24 years old. I think this young man would have a possible career in set decorating, if nothing else. It looks very well designed in terms of how everything is laid out in there. And something that I don't think a lot of people are considering, he moved all his furniture out so he had all the space to do this. First of all, his siblings didn't seem to notice him moving all this furniture out. I'm not quite sure why they didn't notice that. The story from them is that he just locked himself up in there and all of a sudden, 22 or 24 days later, the room was completely changed. But there are some things that were left in the room, like those knickknacks, those Egyptian knickknacks that I mentioned. There's one section of books on a wall where the bookshelf was not cleared out and then used as a writing surface. He left all the books in there, and it's one of the few things that seem like a personal object or personal effects that are left in the room. And considering, if I was going to do something like this, I would say, well, get everything out and, paint all the walls white and give me all the surface that I can for going on this. If there was anything to be left in there, especially with the way this room was staged, for me personally, I think that it was thought about very heavily. Like, hey, some people are going to be coming in here. Wouldn't it look great if I had these kind of Egyptian knickknacks down here? If I had a candle burning in the corner over here, I'll leave my books up there so everyone can see the types of subjects I've been studying and how smart I am. There's just something about it. It feels extremely staged to me when you look at this thing as a whole and you kind of remove these more fantastic elements. The student's shaken businessman father, Athos Borges, said that he saw his son when he left their family home in Rio Branco Acre without any money after lunch on March 27th. Just a little bit of a strange detail. How does your father know that you don't have money? I guess your father just paid for lunch or something along those lines, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a card in your pocket. There's ways that these things are being phrased that it just gives me a little room to question the authenticity of what's going on here. The story becomes more fantastic of him disappearing when there is no money. As a matter of fact, you guys know that when I review missing persons cases and I hear that someone has no money, that is a bit of an alarm for me because they have no means of really taking care of themselves. The story around all this, I found some information that his father was actually approached right before they were going on vacation. They had gone on vacation on March 1st and they got back, and that's when all this writing was done, was while they were away. Before he left, apparently Bruno came to his father and said, look, I really want to get this book patented for some reason. I'm still not quite sure why you would necessarily, maybe they're using the terminology a little bit different. But he told his father, I really want to get this book patented while you're away, and I need a large sum of money to do this. So even at that point, right before his parents left, despite the fact that he gave his mom a sample and she still didn't fund him his project in terms of publishing this, the father was kind of hit up for money in a little bit of a different aspect, still in relation to the books, but hit up for a large sum of money right before they left. To me, as someone that looks into missing persons regularly, if I would hear this in a typical missing persons case, I would say they might be planning on leaving. They're looking to collect a large sum of money and all of a sudden they go disappear. That seems a little suspect to me. Borges' mother, Denise, told the Gaucho newspaper that the family had lunch together and that everything seemed fine. Here's that picture from Facebook of him with E.T. She said, he was clever. In school, he was always different, a born leader with high powers of persuasion. It's really not hard to find a mother gush about their child. It's hard for me when I hear information like this without them saying, he was an honors kid. He got straight A's. A born leader. Tell me what he was leading. He was head of the student body or something like that. These very short, strong statements with no backing information, they make this case very tough for me to kind of take at face value. Moving along to AOL.com. First of all, I didn't even know AOL.com was still around, but here is some information posted by them on Thursday, April 13th. I think I covered this with you guys, but his parents, Denise and Athos, said the work was done in 22 days while they were gone on vacation recently. Borges' brother and sister had remained in the house while their parents were gone and reported that their brother had remained inside his locked room the entire time. Local media reported that the work to Borges' room cost some $6,000 US and that he had acquired the funds from a cousin who had read 15 pages of his writing. So that $6,000 number, I believe they're misunderstanding that here a little bit. According to other reports I've read, the statue did not cost that much. It probably cost somewhere around $3,000. But we do get confirmation here. This kid was hitting up his entire family for this large sum of money. He gets $6,000 from a cousin who mentions that he transfers it into an account. So here we go. We're not talking about a large sack of cash that this kid had to be carrying around. He could have a little plastic card in his pocket and have access to those funds. But what does he do with the money? He uses half of it to buy a statue that is basically the centerpiece of this mystery room that he's left behind, and then he disappears with another $3,000. Once again, just if I'm looking at this as a typical case, this seems like a runaway situation with a twist, where he is trying to gain some interest, fame, notoriety for the way that he left his bedroom, essentially. Now, this is an article from g1.globo.com, and this has been translated, so the English is a little broken in it, but it's one of the better articles in terms of details, And something that also interested me when I first started looking into this was how little the coverage of this case has to do with him actually being a missing person. Most of the coverage you're going to find on this case is about that wacky room. There's not a whole lot that is about the actual details of him missing. This article changes that a little bit, and then I found a really good source, which we'll get to at the end, which changes that a lot. Once again, just confirming, the last time relatives saw him was during his family's usual lunch on Monday, after his parents returned from a 20-day trip. Denise says that Bruno returned home and everyone went back to their normal day of work. Later, Bruno's father returned to the family's home in Rio Branco and realized his son was not there. I was the last person to see Bruno. I left him at the corner of the house, and from there, I believe he went away. Now, I've seen some other information from the sister where she says that she is the person that saw him leave. I don't know which one to believe. I've seen more sources coming from the father that he's the last person to see him. Behind the door of the room, kept 24 days locked while the parents traveled. Instead of furniture, they talk about the statue that was in there, and about how much the statue cost, although it's not in US dollars, so there's a bit of a translation issue. I believe that the currency they use, that the amount he borrowed from his cousin would be $20,000. And it mentions the books that were left behind, written by hand, some of them copied on walls, ceiling, and floor. The disappearance of Bruno was only noticed when the father entered the room and saw the changes that had been made in the place. Quote, I went in there and did not see the bed. I did not see anything. I just saw it all. At that moment, I saw that Bruno was gone, says the businessman. Maybe this is translation issues, but why would you think that your son had disappeared just because you saw that he did this to his room? Why would your first assumption be that I knew that he was gone? I don't know. Does it strike you guys as odd at all? What kind of, just because he wrote all over the place? I don't know. That just, the logic of it, I'm really having trouble with many aspects of the logic in this case. And here we get a very interesting twist, which practically I have seen no English articles talk about. While his parents were traveling, Bruno stayed at home. Now, we have heard this with his brother and his sister, but here we find out it's actually a twin brother, Rodrigo Borges, who declined to comment on the case. So we have a twin we didn't know about who won't comment on the case when you have basically all the other family members popping up in every newspaper around the world making comments on this case. Admittedly, I think the comments are being taken from certain publications and republished over and over. But it doesn't seem very hard to get the family to talk about this. I've seen interview footage with the father, the sisters all over the place talking about this. But you have one brother that won't speak about this, and he happens to be a twin. I just have to wonder, is it an identical twin? I tried to look into photos to see if there was a brother in any of the pictures. I can't really find that many photos. I can't find any photos of the two of them together. It's a bit odd to me. As a matter of fact, this strange theory kind of kicked around in my head. What if he actually isn't missing? What if he is an identical twin? Now, I know family members of identical twins out there are shaking their heads right now saying, no, John, we could always tell the difference between our twins. I get it. But would it be that difficult for him to hide out, for his brother to maybe be giving him more resources, food or funds, something along those lines? I think it certainly is possible, especially when you consider that he's not talking about what's going on with this case. And he's one of the people that was there when all this was going on. Another interesting twist, the mystery reverberated in the social networks after a video recorded without authorization of the family viralized. And I have seen a few different takes on this, and they are all saying that this video was taken from the home without the permission of people. How? What are you guys talking about? Someone walks into your house and starts recording a room, and they go and publish it, and you had no way to stop them. It's in your house. Who let that person in? Who let that person walk around? I mean, we can see the footage. Someone is very obviously using a camera phone, walking, getting literally every wall, getting the floor, getting the ceiling. Is it typical that you let people into your home that you don't know or trust and just let them go off in a room, especially a room like this? If this is a legit missing persons case, there could be evidence in that room. You're letting strangers in to come see the room. I mean, there's been media crews in the room. It's just, there's a lot of things about this case, guys, that really, really gets me in the wrong place. There's much more detail about the money that the cousin gave him in here as well. A little more into the backstory. There's a lot of good detail on this page, but remember, you're going to have to be sure to translate it unless you speak Portuguese. Jumping over to RT.com, here is a tweet that has the two pictures of the philosopher and Bruno, and I can certainly see some resemblance there for sure. Does that mean that there's something supernatural going on, that he is some type of reincarnation of this guy or something along those lines? That's a bit of a stretch for me personally, but no doubt there are some similarities. Once again, it mentions that the writings had passages from the Bible and Da Vinci, and they're saying what look like pentagrams. I've watched the footage several times. I don't see traditional pentagrams. Now, in this image down here, if they mean just the way that this design was laid out, that's not really a pentagram for me personally, but I don't know a whole lot about that topic. Maybe it's some different twist on a pentagram that I'm not familiar with. A little more detail from his mother on the books. According to his mother, Borges started his work in 2013 and began working on it intensely in the past year. Quote, "He just told me that he was writing 14 books that would change mankind in a good way," she said. She told Globo that she believes the case is not just a standard missing person incident. I can certainly agree with that. I don't think it's standard either. Outside of that, if you talk to most authors about writing 14 books over a 3 to 4 year span, I think they would say that you're probably crazy unless you were writing books that weren't of very high quality or an extremely low page count, which at least from the shots we can see some of those books look pretty thick, but I don't know. Jumping over to plus55.com, we got a little detail about some of that money that I mentioned earlier. Before his parents' vacation, Bruno had asked them for money in order to patent his ideas. He told his family that he had discovered a theory that would forever change humanity for the better, but his parents denied him the financial support. His father posted a video promising his son that he would finance the publication of his books if he would only return home. Once again, coming back to money, to the point where people extremely close to him, like his parents, are trying to get him to come home by offering him money. What is going on with this case? That is just, it's kind of unbelievable to me. I'm not even sure if I should really believe that. The father posted a video saying, "Come home and I'll help you publish these books." First of all, let's talk about publishing books nowadays, especially for someone in college, someone that is as smart as Bruno apparently is. Anyone can publish a book nowadays for nothing, literally for free. Publishing a book does not cost anything. This isn't the same as it was, I guess I would say 10, 20 years ago. Publishing a book is not the big thing. Getting the book seen, getting it publicized, marketing the book is where a lot of people would be spending money on something like this. And there's a reason why self-publishing is a viable option for some people. If what you write is really all that brilliant and really all that great, people are going to read it and they're going to tell other people about it. There's a natural growth that can happen around that. So something that you will not see in most of the English coverage, at least any of the English coverage that I've bumped into, is there is actually video footage of Bruno. Supposedly he disappeared on the 27th of March. But if we look at this video footage, we can see that it is dated the following day. Now, could the date be wrong on this footage? Possibly. I'm really not certain, but there he is, running down the street in his shorts and shirt as described. Now, this video is what really opened this up for me. This video is a news piece that was done by a show, I believe it's called Fantastico. And the thing about this video is it's obviously not in English. So I first came across this video, I started watching it, and I could see they were going into this thing really in depth. So I turned on, I didn't even know YouTube could do this, but you can turn on the closed captions. There was no English option, but there is an auto translate option. So I turned that on. Now, as you can imagine, it was really hokey. I would say it works probably like half the time. A certain voice would come on the video and it would just knock out. There'd be no translation all of a sudden. But I watched the entire thing like that, and through watching it, I could see these reporters actually looked into it as a missing persons case. And there's a ton of information to be found in this. Now, unfortunately, there isn't a direct English translation of this, but I did find a page at Reddit that basically has all of the major points from it that have been translated to English so we can talk about them. So let's fire through these real quick and see if we can understand this mystery anymore. First of all, he didn't leave home with nothing. He had a backpack and he had a hard drive. I believe in the report it mentioned that he might have had a laptop, but I don't know if that was a translation issue when it was talking about the hard drive. There is a cab driver that picked him up and took him to a hotel. So we know that he had other stuff. The cab driver actually described the stuff that he had with him. And here it says at 3 o'clock he took a taxi and the driver showed the way that he drove him. And he noted that he was talking to someone on the phone about the destination that he was heading to or something related. After about a 15-minute drive, he went out of the taxi to a nearby motel, but it doesn't look like he stayed at that motel. However, behind the motel, there is a forest area that has a big open spot that had 5 chairs out there. And apparently there are late night gatherings that happen at that spot. Bonfires happen out there. And the chairs, there's 4 white chairs and 1 red one. I don't know if that is significant for any reason. Then they interviewed a dressmaker who said that she also saw him and he ordered 3 cloaks like the one depicted in the paintings without the symbol. And she asked him whether it was for the church. Then he answered almost that. Now, one of the other paintings in his room had this white cloak. It looked like kind of an old religious painting, and I think there was even a cross in the person's hand, if I recall correctly. But the other photo of him with the gray, if we take a look at that again, also has him in a white cloak with the gray. So I don't know if this is something about his concept, but obviously it was important enough to him that he went to a dressmaker to get those cloaks made, and she did make them. He later returned there with a friend and tried the cloak on, and she says that obviously he liked how it came out. The friend that was with him was also interviewed. He confirmed the existence of the cloak, but said he does not know about the project itself, although he believes the reason of Bruno's disappearance is to spotlight his work while either evading or meditating. So keep in mind, you now have a brother that won't talk about this. You have a friend that was seen with him after he supposedly disappeared, went with him on this cloak buying expedition, says he doesn't really understand what's going on, but he does think that Bruno is trying to raise attention to his work. Then they had a mathematician who talked about the basis of the cryptography that was used. The key string was taken from Junior Woodchuck's guidebook, and they showed the key that his sister had found. Literally, it was like 2 strips of paper. On one side you had the regular alphabet, and on the other side you had the corresponding symbol that he was shifting in for that letter of the alphabet. We have another friend who refused to be interviewed, but confirmed he was there with him in the room during the 24 days. And that he was not eating during the days that he was writing the text all over the place. So the family members that were there, we haven't heard anything from them confirming this, but apparently there was a friend in there with him. It did occur to me when I was first looking at this that it would be much easier if you were taking that project on with someone else, even if his friend was just helping to draw all the outlines kind of ahead of where Bruno would be writing the text, because the text this is totally an unprofessional opinion, and there's very limited information to go on, but the text looks like it's written by the same hand. There's not a lot of variations in the types of symbols, at least from the limited footage that I've seen on this. But a friend could have helped him with laying out the spaces, obviously moving all the furniture, which is another thing. How his brother, his twin brother, and his sister didn't notice all the furniture being removed from his house, and then a giant stone statue being brought into the house. I find that highly suspicious. I really, really suspect that the siblings are in on this, and they also know what's going on with this. Another friend believes the handwritten books are his masterpiece and does not discharge the possibility of a marketing strategy. The authorities believe his friends made some kind of silence agreement, I believe they mean a silent pact, regarding his groundbreaking discoveries. CCTV footage shows his last appearance running in the direction of his own home just before vanishing. So that footage that I showed you, apparently he was running in a direction towards his home. His sister believes he is well, although she wants him back home. Police are investigating, but believe that he might have left the city and or state willingly. His father confirms this belief by phone and discharges the possibility of a kidnapping. So his family, who doesn't know where he is, won't even support the theory that he has been kidnapped. They always knew he would disappear after finishing his work, but as they did not fund him on time, they are remorseful now. What are these people talking about? This sounds like this kid is trying to bilk his parents for money. I don't get it. I don't get it. There are so many references to him grabbing for cash. And supposedly he's writing this great philosophical treatment about existence of life on this planet and made this major breakthrough. Is the major breakthrough to grab all the cash you can from your family while you can and then run away with it? It's kind of baffling. Yeah, and here's a note about what has been found in the room. Mostly philosophy matters and questions about space-time relations. So there, at least we get some hint of something having to possibly do with extraterrestrials, but not necessarily. The meaning of life and how one is supposed to leave a masterpiece as legacy. The experts on cryptography basically said that he didn't use proper cryptography ciphers, and he simply substituted characters and left the key string in the room. I mean, if you're really trying to hide information, he did not do it in a very strong way. It seems pretty obvious to me that he wanted this thing cracked. Why he even encrypted it in the first place kind of doesn't make sense if he's leaving the key in the room. Even if you were trying to spin this up as an internet mystery, take the key. Hide that key. Someone out there can decipher this type of thing, especially if you're just using simple substitution of characters. So even that doesn't seem like it's all that well thought out, if he was indeed trying to spin this up into some type of internet, conspiracy theory. So the Peruvian sculptor that made the statue of Giordano Bruno is now working on a bust of Bruno Borges himself, which is an amazing turn in this. And the hypothesis is this looks like a marketing stunt to publish the books, and that also appears to be what his father would believe that it is. So this Fantastico Report, tons of great information. I want to give a quick thank you to whoever translated this. I believe it's George AMVF at Reddit. He also answers a lot of questions down below as people try to get clarification on this. But it's a very, very different story than we're hearing from the other media sources on this. A lot more information, and it seems like this is a person that has run away. I believe this was planned. He probably ran away with nothing because, think about it, his room was already emptied. We know that he at least had friends coming over. He could have given them a bag. Hey, take this. Here's my clothes. I'm going to need these when I split this place. There is really nothing very fantastic going on here. We have several confirmations of people stating they think this is a marketing stunt. And ultimately, it comes down to those books. If those books are great, put them out, publish them. Publish just the first one. Put it up on a website somewhere for free where people can start reading it and say, hey, by the way, there's 13 more of these if you guys are interested in this. There's ways to get this information out if it is really everything that it's being cracked up to be in terms of how this story is being retold. For me, that's the real mystery. Are these books really anything significant, or is it just a desperate attempt at fame? And kind of money seems to be a very important thing in this kid's life for some reason. Is it just a desperate attempt at those two very material objects? I don't know, but that's kind of ultimately where I wound up with the case. Is Bruno really hanging out with his extraterrestrial friend on some other planet? I sincerely doubt it. I think the way that he left his room behind, he wants us to believe it. Even the fact that he took a friend to go pick up the white cloaks with him. Now that nugget of information can come back through media, and we could all learn about that and say, oh, well, look, he's wearing the white cloak in this picture, and he's taking another white cloak for his space friend out there somewhere. I don't know, guys. I really don't like the feeling of being manipulated. And from very early on into looking into this case, I was feeling that really, really heavily. I really tried to steer clear of it. I tried to keep my mind open. But it was very, very tough with this case because I was already seeing so many discrepancies just from the family members, just from their comments on one site to a different site, just on the logistics of how he left, what was going on, what the siblings noticed while the parents were gone. There's just, the information is extremely flaky. I don't buy it. I think this kid is running away. He'll be back. He's run off with his cousin's money. He's going to blow through all that. Now that he knows there's more money waiting for him when he comes home, he'll probably take that. He might disappear again, blow all that. I don't know. But is this story as fantastic as it's being made out to be? I think thank you to the reporting done by Fantastico, we can say, no. This is some fairly, I don't want to say normal or common, but it is understandable. The motivations for it seem very understandable and kind of obvious. And I don't know. What do you guys think? Please tell me about it in the comments down below. I'm really happy I was able to get through this episode. I think my voice is about to go out though, so I'm going to call this the end of BrainScratch and thank each and every one of you for spending some time with me. Of course, I'm sure some of you out there might have information I didn't cover on this. Please share that with the rest of us down below. Please be sure to check out the description box where I'll have all the links that we looked through today and a couple of other ones that we didn't touch on. So you can also review this info. I really wish there was a word-for-word translation of that Fantastico report somewhere. Maybe if you speak Portuguese or you have a friend that does, maybe you can make that happen. I think that there's a lot of value in that report. I have to put this out there, I did see some people commenting that Fantastico is not the most trustworthy news source. But I have to say, from what I was seeing, they were interviewing other people. The information was coming from other people. It didn't seem like to me that the conversation was being driven by the actual reporters. It felt like decent reporting to me, but that is with very limited exposure to it. Anyway, I hope you all have a great weekend. Thank you so much, and I'll see you back here on the Lord and Arch channel.